a movie, we visit a web page, write a blog, post on the social media, and even when we just walk or drive around, we are generating data. And we are not happy only with generating the data. We also are consumer of data. We want to have products and services specialized for us. We want our needs to be understood and the interest to be predicted. For example, a supermarket chain, if you take as an example, is able to predict which consumer is likely to buy which product to maximize the sales and profit. Similarly, each consumer wants to find out the set of products best matching his or her needs. So the customer behavior changes in time and with the geographic location also, but we know that is not completely random. There is a pattern behind each of this data, what we generate. For example, as you all are faculty of computer science department, you all know that you can write an algorithm for sorting an array or searching for a string, etc. But for some tasks, we do not have an algorithm. For example, predicting consumer behavior or customer behavior, or whether to differentiate between a spam email and a legitimate ones. Why there is no particular algorithm for these conditions are, it changes with time, and it also changes from individual to individual. So I cannot write a generalized algorithm which will predict the customer behavior, because there are different customers available, and which will also tell whether this is a spam email or legitimate email, because for each individual the selection of spam and legitimate is going to vary. So we don't have the knowledge to write a general algorithm to do this. So we surpass this lack of knowledge with data. So we create lot of data, and we know that over the cloud or over the WhatsApp or the Twitter accounts or the Instagram, we have generated so much data, and we post this, given this data, we post this learning algorithm to the computer and try to find out one solution for that. So finally, machine learning and deep learning boils down to finding out patterns or regularities in the data generated by all of us. So this is the main point of machine learning, and such patterns may help us to understand the process, or finally we can use these patterns to make predictions. So in this presentation, we will be seeing a little bit introduction to artificial intelligence, okay, and start with some machine learning definitions and applications, then go on to deep learning definitions and applications, and we will compare machine learning with deep learning, and I will just give you some pointers to some good books which you can use it for teaching in your class or starting your research, etc. Okay, so before we go into a definition of artificial intelligence, finally the applications of machine learning and deep learning ends up with some recognition or prediction. The word recognition has the word recognize. Recognize can be divided into recognize. Cognize means to know. So we are making the computer to know the situation, and we try to find out a suitable strategy and act accordingly, like how we do this in our brain. For example, if you are trying to identify a person or through his face, his or her face, then you just go through in your brain whether his face is recorded somewhere in your memory, and try to recollect where you saw him and then recognize him. So that is what we are trying to do by means of different programs using the machines. Okay, so with this brief introduction, I'll just start with my presentation. These are the topics what we'll be covering. So this is a very basic diagram usually people refer to when they want to compare different technologies or different algorithms. The superset of all the algorithms is artificial intelligence, where we try to write programs or we make the computers to learn and reason like humans. Okay, so that is known as artificial intelligence, because that is not the natural intelligence which the humans have. We just generate the same natural intelligence into the machines, and therefore we call this as an artificial intelligence. Machine learning, which is quite popular now and it's a talk of the town nowadays in all the research areas, is a subset of artificial intelligence, and it refers to the algorithms with the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. So as I told you in the introduction, the input to machine learning will be labeled data. I'll just tell you later what is labeled data. Whatever data we have generated, we just write an inference to each of these data. And with this mapping, with the input to the labels, we give that input to the machine and try to learn it. And after it learns that entire mapping, when you give a new unknown input to that particular machine, it will predict the label. It will predict the output of that recognition algorithm. So that's what machine learning algorithms do. Recent years, deep learning has become very popular, which is again a subset of machine learning, in which artificial neural networks adapt and learn from vast amounts of data. So specifically, deep learning considers only artificial neural networks. They are quite popular nowadays because it indirectly mimics the structure of our brain, where we have a lot of neurons connected to one another, and one neuron is fired if the input to that particular neuron is greater than some threshold, and if that particular neuron is fired, that part of the brain is excited, and you will be doing that part which is supposed to do. For example, if you see a face of some unknown person, the neuron which had recorded that you had seen that particular person years before will be fired, because you would have related that particular face to that neuron, and you will try to recognize him. Okay, so deep learning is a subset of machine learning algorithms, particularly doing all the recognition and prediction using neural networks, which is similar to our brain, which is a connection of many neurons. Okay, so there is another way of explaining artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. And we have given examples in each one of these criteria. The largest circle is the artificial intelligence. One of the example of artificial intelligence is the knowledge bases, where we create a lot of databases with inbuilt knowledge. So as computer science faculty, you know about the databases, where we create maybe the database of the students studying in your class, or the marks scored by them, or the attendance of them, etc. Those are just databases. But now for artificial intelligence, you require knowledge bases where you include some extra knowledge to the data what is stored in that. So using that, if I implement an algorithm, we call it as artificial intelligence. The subset of that is the machine learning algorithm. And one example is the logistic regression. It is more like an interpolation type of an algorithm. We will not go into details of that. So that is one of the example of machine learning algorithm. So logistic regression is a discriminant algorithm, where it will try to find out the missing points or the missing values in a time series, etc. Subset of that, even before we go to deep learning, there is a representation learning algorithm, where one example is the shallow autoencoders. Autoencoders, as you can understand from the definition itself, encoders encode the input data, but now we try to have autoencoders which will automatically encode the data and store it as a representation, such that it will use it when you do the prediction. Because we will be talking about deep learning later, we call these autoencoders as shallow autoencoders, which are not so deep. Machine learning does not have any depth at all, because we don't talk about neural networks in machine learning mostly. Representation learning is a compromise between machine learning and deep learning, where you have shallow networks, but deep learning is you have many layers. That is, the network itself is too deep. And one of the example is multi-layer perceptrons, which you would have heard before. Okay, so there's a relationship between artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. This is another way of writing the relation over all these buzzwords, because you will be hearing these words again and again. And here I've added another word, which is data science, which is what students are very much interested to know, correct? Because they try to do masters in data science, etc. So this has all the definitions which we have seen till now. Artificial intelligence, the capability of the machine to imitate intelligent human behavior. Machine learning is concerned with the question of how to construct computer programs that automatically improve with experience. That's another part which you should know. It is not just writing computer programs for sorting an array or searching for a string, etc. It should it should improve its performance by experience. That means once I add lot more data to it, it should improve its recognition performance or prediction performance, etc. So that is how your regular programming differs from machine learning. Deep learning is implementing machine learning itself, but with lot of data and lot of layers for helping it. Data science is just a part which accumulates with all the three fields: artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. It is actually used for extracting abstract knowledge and insights from the data. Okay, so once you play only with data without knowing about the intelligence behind that or the knowledge behind that, so we call that field of science as the data science. Okay, so there's a relation over all these buzzwords. So this is another slide, and you can see the time scale below. So in 1950s, we were talking about artificial intelligence. These are the key technologies which is driving the artificial intelligence. Any technique that enables machine to mimic human intelligence, we called it as artificial intelligence in 1950. Then came machine learning, which started using explicitly programming in around 1980s, and now we are in 2010, where deep learning have become very popular. Neural networks with many layers that learn representation and tasks directly from the data. So that's where we are in now. So that's why it's become quite popular. So instead of writing a hard code program or finding out the features by physically by the programmers, etc., we can just try to train a deep learning algorithm such that it will itself find the features to do the recognition and prediction. So these are some of the examples where artificial intelligence started. They try to use artificial intelligence where there is an routine labor, routine work. So you want to search pages together, which is very routine work, and I don't want to always write a code to search a page in the internet. So there are search engines which will do that for you. So we have given an example of Google search, which you already use in, day out. And there is Baidu, that is a Chinese web search engine, and it's very popular also. So artificial intelligence used to automate the routine labor which we are doing. So search engine is one. Another application where we use artificial intelligence is to understand speech. So you would have come across Siri application in Apple gadgets, and the right one is the Amazon Alexa, which most of you will be using it at homes. So whatever question you post to Alexa, it will convert it to text, or it will send it to Google voice search, and it will take the results and it will give that answer back in text to you. Okay, so these are the things which the artificial intelligence applications consist of. And now, which is very popular, is autonomous vehicles, which is all in the research stage now. And you would have heard about the Google car or the Tesla car, which is all automatic. And for this type of machines to be built up, you require the following knowledge. So it should be intuitive and subjective, and you should know how to get this knowledge into the computer. You know how the car runs, you know what all the parameters it will consider while driving your car. So you have to intuitively put all this information into the computer. You have to hard code the knowledge which you know for driving a car into the computer, which is going to control the car or the autonomous vehicle. But this is quite a big process to do that. You can see the flow chart on the right hand side. Given an input and I want the required output, that I want the car to run automatically, you have to have a hand designed program in between. Okay, so this becomes very complex. Okay, hand designed program. And this takes a lot of time of human experts, and the people struggle to formalize rules with enough complexity to describe the world. So it is like when you want the car to move on its own, you have to describe the entire world to the car, and therefore the complexity is too much, and therefore people struggle to formalize these rules. So that's where your machine learning and deep learning comes into picture. So, but there are examples in earlier years where artificial intelligence games. So one is the Deep Blue, which you would have come across. So the first computer to defeat a human in chess, and that to the world chess player. Gary Kasparov in 1996, and he could generate and evaluate about 200 million chess positions per second. And this is one of the earliest examples of weak artificial intelligence. We will talk about weak artificial intelligence later, but this is a very good example of artificial intelligence beating the humans. And you all know there are 64 squares in Deep Blue, and 32 coins to be moved, and therefore there is a finite number of positions depending on the positions on the board, and therefore you can easily program the computer to move according to the existing positions on the board. There's another complex game which we call it as Go. So that's the figure of Go on the right hand side. This is the Go playing, and this is slightly complex than the chess. And there is a program, artificial intelligence program called AlphaGo, which won in most of the most complicated games ever invented. Learning how to play it and not just calculating all the possible moves. That is, you are not feeding the computer with all the possible moves. The computer, after you program, it will start learning it on its own. It's not like each and every position you are programming. Okay, so these are some of the examples of that. This small slide gives you a history of AI. One is the Greek mythology example, the other one is Indian mythology example, and this shows a history of chatbots. Okay, so the chatbots, as you know, you have computers answering to your customer calls. It started in 1950, and still you have many chatbots coming in. Okay, the simplest example where you can think of AI is the handwritten character recognition. So the machine learning started with handwritten character recognition, and initially they made it very simple by just recognizing only the digits 0 to 9. So you can see handwritten digits 0 to 9 written in different styles, and this is used for finding out the pin code in the envelope and sorting the letters according to the pin code. Okay, so that's the elementary example from where artificial intelligence started, and nowadays we are just using a deep network like this to do this entire handwritten recognition algorithm. If it's a printed recognition algorithm, we call it as optical character recognition, or in other words it's known as OCR. So nowadays handwriting recognition cannot be done without ML, because each one of us have different styles of writing the characters, and handwriting is the fruit fly of AI, and handwriting is used for address interpretation. So this slide shows the difference between artificial narrow intelligence and artificial general intelligence. And when we talked about weak intelligence, and artificial narrow intelligence is specialized in area. Artificial general intelligence is specialized in all areas. We can just see in an examples above. For example, if you want to diagnose mental disorders, it comes under narrow intelligence, because your algorithm is used to diagnose only mental disorders. But if I am going to differentiate right from wrong, then it becomes general intelligence. Okay, so then you can go through all other examples also. Then we have now artificial super intelligence also, which is smarter than humans in every way. Now we are trying to have algorithms which are not like humans but smarter than humans. Okay, so that's why we have differentiated intelligence as 3 categories: narrow intelligence, general intelligence, and super intelligence. So this is a difference between general intelligence and narrow intelligence. General intelligence is like a human, but narrow intelligence is great for a single task or family of tasks, as I told you before. For example, you write an algorithm for an autonomous vehicle, it will do that task very nicely. Okay, but general intelligence is more like a robot here. It's known as R2D2. You would have seen this character in Star Wars, and it can pass a Turing test. Turing test is a test for measuring the intelligence quotient of a particular algorithm, and it can reason and learn new unrelated things on demand. Okay, you can recollect the Robo film also, where they used to try to build this type of intelligence into the robots. But for narrow intelligence, it is designed to be efficient, accurate at its job. Given a job, it is very efficient and accurate. It is not going to learn anything new, and there is no machinery to automatically learn a new task. And examples are autonomous car or a water level indicator. So that's a difference between general intelligence versus narrow intelligence. This again the differences between that. But today's AI is narrow intelligence, but general intelligence is going to be our future AI. Okay, so it will learn from few examples or from unstructured data. It will start learning, but here in narrow intelligence, you would have programmed it such that it will do a application specific task only. Okay. So narrow intelligence performs repetitive tasks, limited ability, cannot self-program, and that is what is currently existed. But general artificial intelligence performs a multitude of tasks, unlimited abilities, can self-program, and currently inexistent. It is all in the research. So these are the AI technologies which is going to replicate the intelligence of humans. These are the senses of a human, how the human comprehends using the senses, and how we acts. Okay, so the sense of the humans is used for computer vision and audio processing. Computer vision is what the humans see, audio processing is what the humans hear, and the comprehending part of humans is how he processes the language. We call it as natural language processing, and how he represents that knowledge in his brain. So that is how he comprehends knowledge. So that's about the comprehend part of the artificial intelligence. And finally, how the humans act, how we recognizes, how we predicts, all these things come under expert systems, etc. So these are the three ways how humans react, and same thing we have to build it up in our AI technologies. So some of the illustrative solutions are virtual agents, identity analytics. You would have seen some analytics in the previous talks, etc. Cognitive robotics, speech analytics, which will talk about natural language processing, etc. Recommender systems, you would have seen such recommendations in Google or your Facebook, etc. Depending upon which pages you have visited, the Facebook itself recommends that these are the pages you may like, or these are the people you might know, depending upon your friends in the Facebook, etc. That's known as recommender systems. And you can have some data visualization by which you can find out the relationship between the data, what you have created, etc. Okay, so these are all the AI technologies which is going to mimic the abilities of the humans. So seeing all the introduction to artificial intelligence, we come up to paradigms of artificial intelligence, which is classified as three different paradigms. One is a rule-based system, which we have already seen. One is a classic machine learning, where instead of writing the program, we try to design features and then go to the output mapping from the features. So this is what the shaded box is different from what you do in the rule-based system. So as you saw in the representation learning, instead of hand design features, we try to find out the features because we try to find out a representation such that it helps in learning that particular application, and then map to features and go to the output. But now we talk about deep learning, where we try to find out simple features and then complex features using additional layers, etc., and then do the mapping from features to the output. Okay, so these are the three paradigms of AI, which we saw in the initial Venn diagram also. Okay, so we'll be seeing the classical machine learning and the deep learning paradigm of AI. So two ways to get a computer to do what we want. We are very clear, like the computer has to do applications like how humans do those applications, correct? So initially when we are using hand programming, or when we were doing the interpreted logic type of applications, we had data with us. We used to write programs for doing that, and then we created the output. So the computer was used to just get the output using the data and the program what we wrote. But now in machine learning and deep learning, what we do is we don't write programs, we create more and more data, use the output as the labels for the data, and use the computer to find out the model. Okay, so what does the model will do? The model will find out the patterns in the data such that it will predict the output given a new data. Okay, so that's what this is a difference between what we were doing earlier, like your searching and sorting algorithms, and what we are doing now, like your character recognition or face recognition algorithms. Okay, so that's a difference between the two ways, what we were doing before and what we are doing now. So we come to machine learning. So it was first coined in 1959 by Arthur Samuel, an earlier pioneer of computer gaming and AI, and a very popular author Tom Mitchell. Is a book on machine learning by Tom Mitchell in 1997. He defines machine learning as a computer program is said to learn from experience. So you give data as an experience. That is the data what you would have stored in your brain as an experience. With respect to some class of task, that means for seeing the faces, I will have this type of experience. I would have seen all these faces. If I am finding out the character recognition, then I would have stored all these characters as my experience, etc. And the performance measure P, if its performance at tasks is T, as measured by P, improves with experience E. So you have to know the difference between just programming and machine learning. The machine learning should improve its experience with the increase in the experience E. Okay, so with the improvement in the experience E, it should improve the performance measure P. So that is the definition provided by Tom Mitchell. And this is how we have to design algorithms now for machine learning. Take the data, consume the data, apply statistical techniques to detect the patterns, learn how to perform some task T, and this you have to do iterative process. This learning will be going on in indefinite time. Each iteration's attempt at a particular task is measured against a correct outcome for that task. So P is the performance. So if it improves, the algorithm adjusts itself further in the direction of adjustment that led to the performance. It will start going in the same direction because the performance is keeping on improving. But if it feels that performance is going bad, it will go to the opposite direction undertaken by the algorithm. As simple as that. Okay. So we have three categories of machine learning algorithms. One is supervised machine learning. The second one is unsupervised machine learning. I told you about the output given as input to the computer. So data and the output is given to the computer to design the model. So if that output is not available, we call it as unsupervised machine learning algorithms. So we say no labels are associated with the data points. Supervised machine learning algorithms have labels associated with that. That means this face belongs to this person, this fingerprint belongs to this person, this character is A, this character is 9, etc. Searches for patterns within the value labels. And the last category of machine learning algorithms is the reinforcement machine learning algorithms. To choose an action based on each data point, it changes its strategy to learn better. It's more like playing chess or the playing Go, etc. Okay, so these are the three categories of machine learning algorithms. So what are the difficulties of hard-coded approach, which we were doing before? It allows computer to learn from experience. Machine learning allows the computers to learn from experience. It first determines what features to use, and it learns to map the features to the outputs. Machine learning algorithms should be able to find out this discriminant function between the two classes of data. It's not like a very easy straight line which will differentiate between the blue data points and the black data points. It should be able to find out this non-linear discriminant function. And it should be robust. So you can see blue and red points neatly separated by a straight line, a linear discriminant. But what happened if I added some noise and you have some erroneous points, that is these blue points, you can see that particular line has shifted like this because you have to consider this data also. So because you are building up that knowledge into the computer, and the computer just blindly finds out a classification including this outliers also. So you should be able to find out robust machine learning algorithms such that it doesn't consider these points, it just ignores these points as outliers and sticks on only to this discriminant function, because this gives less error than this discriminant function. This gives more error because you can see many blue points are classified as red points, etc. Okay, so you should be careful while designing those machine learning algorithms. So the approach towards machine learning is you should do the generalization that is possible by training. Training requires a lot of data to be fed into the algorithm. That's how we do with collecting the data or the samples. Then you have to find out the model. That means indirectly it's a probability distribution to model that particular process. And finally, you have to estimate the parameters. That's the model parameters. You have to fix a model and find out the parameters of the model. And finally, when you do the decision or prediction, you just use the parameters of that model to make a decision or the inference. Okay, find responses to queries. Machine learning algorithms are also classified based on the type of data, which we saw now: supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised, etc. Reinforcement learning also we saw. These are all based on the type of the data. So supervised have labeled the data, Unsupervised do not have labels. Semi-supervised is a mix of labeled and unlabeled data. Reinforcement learning is finding out or predicting based on with respect to time, like the movement in the chessboard, etc. Based on the type of the output, we classify machine learning algorithms as regression and classification. Regression is like your interpolation. If you have missing points or missing data points or something, you can interpolate those values. So if you want to find a real value, then we call it as a regression problem. Or if I want to classify as one class or the other, does this face belong to this person or not, we call it as a classification problem. So this is the classification based on the type of the output of the algorithm. Based on the type of the model, we can have generative models or discriminative models. As I showed in the previous slide, discriminative models divides the data into different classes, discriminates the data points. Generative models will just explain that particular data points using a model. Okay, so that's the difference between generative model and discriminative model. Generative model will find out the model with different parameters. Discriminative model will find the discriminant function or the discriminator which distinguishes between the classes. So these are the classification with respect to machine learning. This is a nice periodic table of machine learning algorithms. You can see supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised, then you have representation learning, and you have all your lasso algorithm, then your PCA algorithm, GANs are here, RBMs are here. So this is a nice periodic table. It will not be very clear in the screen, but you can just see that in the internet and just understand what are the different machine learning algorithms which you can have. Okay. And these are some of the applications of supervised learning. We have seen all these applications. So we can just, this is just a slide on supervised learning. And this is a slide on unsupervised learning. We can talk about recommender systems. Like if these two persons are reading this book, that means they'll be interested in this book also. Similarly, you can have collaborative filtering or recommendation systems using collaborative filtering, etc. Okay, so these are topic modeling, recommendation systems are all unsupervised learning where you don't have labels to the data what you have collected. This is an example of reinforcement learning, as I told you, game playing or robots in a maze, etc. So the sitting cat will start walking if you show a reward. Okay, so that's what reinforcement learning does. You reinforce something to the particular object such that it will change its state of action. Okay, so if you show a fish, then the cat will be interested and it will start walking and come and eat the fish. Okay, so that's what, there will be a change in the state whenever there is a reward. Okay, so that's an example of reinforcement learning. This is a regression. So you find out a curve fitting problem. As I told you, interpolation is more like curve fitting. So this is the type of regression problems you can think of. Ranking is one of the application where we try to, you would have seen in Google search. So when you search a term in the Google, it will give you the pages with the different ranking also. So this is the most ranked, this is the next rank, etc. And that is all with the data which you have generated. It all depends upon what you had searched today or what you had searched about a month before, what all other people are searching. Based on that, they rank the pages. So URL length, page length, query word, number of images on page, all these things will choose which page should be ranked the best. These I talked about generative and discriminative models. These are some of the algorithms. Most of the discriminative models are unsupervised learning algorithms, nearest neighbor, SVMs, etc. And all these generative models are all like modeling using the probability density functions like Gaussians, hidden Markov models, Markov random fields, etc. So these are some of the machine learning use cases. So I'll just go through one example. So maybe K-means algorithm or something. So the use case is segmentation of customers of an internet store. Okay. So what will be the data input for this particular application? Purchase history of loyalty program members. What all the customers have purchased and what is the history of what all they have purchased is will be the data to that particular use case. And what will be the target value? The segment number assigned to every customer. What this customer is going to buy in the future. So that segment number, this customer belongs to this particular cluster. it will find out the cluster of customers and it will have a recommendation for that particular customer. So we use a k-means clustering for that. So like that, I have examples for all the use cases. You can just go through that. So before we go to deep learning, I have one small question session here. So I will put a link in the chat box. You can just enter the answer for that particular link, for that poll we have seen till now. Hope you are giving the responses. Are you able to give the poll? Yeah. So the question is, which of the following are classification problems? So you can just choose whichever you feel is correct. So I think most of you are getting the correct answer. So just wait for some more time and then we will stop. Okay, so everybody knows that predicting the temperature of a room is not a classification problem. It is a regression problem because you are trying to predict some number, correct? And that's why nobody is selecting that. And filtering of spam images also is not a classification problem because identifying the spam image is a classification problem, but filtering is not. But most of them have chosen B, which is predicting if a cricket player is a batsman or a bowler. So you have to differentiate between a batsman or a bowler. And naturally, finding the shortest route between 2 points is not a classification problem. So that's what it is. Okay, good. So at least you have heard whatever I was presenting and you are able to find out what is a classification problem. We'll go to the next slide. Yeah. So now once we have understood machine learning, we will come to feature learning and then representation learning and go to deep learning. Okay. So we know what is feature learning. So function to map pixels to object identity is complicated. So that's why we try to identify the features before finding out the identity. Okay, we cannot map the input directly to the classification category, but we map it to some features and then do the identity. Okay, so that's how feature learning becomes important. And this is what feature learning is. You can see this is the first layer, visible layer, where you have the input pixel. So this is the color of the dress, and this is the skin color, and this is some background or something, and this is your visible layer, which is the input pixels. So the first layer, hidden layer, will find out the edges. You can see the horizontal edges, vertical edges, etc. The second layer will try to find out some corners and contours. And the third layer will find out objects. You can see the small objects which are all present in this picture. And the final layer will tell you what is the classification of this. In this particular input, you have person as the classification, and therefore that is your output layer, which will identify the object. So what this all these layers, and the features are in terms of edges, corners and contours, and object parts. Okay, so that's what we call it as feature learning. So based on that, you have seen the layers in the previous slide, and that's how we come to deep learning. This is the input layer, this is the output layer, and all these circles are termed as neurons or nodes, and there are connections between the nodes, and these are known as the hidden layers. So if number of hidden layers are more and more, we call it as deeper neural networks. Okay. So this is some applications using deep learning: speech recognition, automated driving, face detection, which you would have seen in all your mobile cameras, right? So face detection, etc. All are deep learning algorithms. And these are some of the applications for images and video. You can see object recognized, all the cars are recognized, and this road is recognized separately. These buildings are all recognized separately. And this is, you look only once. YOLO is a very popular object detection algorithm which uses deep learning. And once we talked about features, the representations also matter. How you represent those features in the network, in the neural network, is what it matters. So I have two classes, blue and green, and it's distributed in this way. You don't have control on how the data points will be distributed in a 2D or 2 dimensions, because on the screen you can show only 2 dimensions. But this is in the Cartesian coordinates x and y. So as you see that they are arranged circularly, naturally, where this is of smaller radius and this is of larger radius. You convert to polar coordinates and plot r here and theta here. You know how to convert that. You can see that they are linearly separable. You can have a separable linear discriminant dividing blue points from the green points. So representation also matters. Okay, so that's what we talk about representation learning. So this is about representation learning. And finally, we come to definition of deep learning. Deep learning is a particular kind of machine learning that achieves greater power and flexibility by learning to represent the world as nested hierarchy of concepts. Okay, we saw the three layers, okay, edges, contours, and objects, with each concept defined in relation to simpler concepts and more abstract representation computed in terms of less abstract ones. So it's a subtype of machine learning, which we have already seen, but it will take a lot of time to compute because there are too many layers. Okay, this just shows the history of deep learning. So deep learning is inspired by neural networks of the brain. It's used to build learning machines which discover rich and useful internal representation. It's computed as a composition of learned features and functions. And it's aspirational like AI. We are very aspirant to define deep learning like this. We want computers to do whatever we are doing and learn on its own. We don't want the computer to be programmed like how we do things. Okay, so it's an aspirational definition like AI or machine learning. And the underpinnings of deep learning are it's related to neurobiology. You would have heard about Macaulay's and Pitt's model. They only first found out how each neuron fires, when that neuron gets life, when it is excited. So that's the Macaulay's and Pitt's model, which is related to neurobiology. It's also related to statistical physics, where we talk about spinning of atoms to the right or left, etc. So Boltzmann and Gibbs, which are who are physicists, also have contributed to deep learning by the restricted Boltzmann machines, RBMs, and the Gibbs sampling and Gibbs probability density distribution, etc. And we also talk about distributed computing, where we have the latest Bengio and the author of the deep learning book, who were awarded the Turing Award in 2019. So deep learning is not just writing algorithms like we were doing before. It is related to all these science features also. Okay, so you should be careful before they are putting your hand into deep learning. So this is understands the world as this is a smaller diagram. I'll just show you in a bigger one. This is one very popular competition where they ask for good deep learning algorithms. You can just search through the net. It's known as ImageNet competition. It has 1,000 category of images. You can see all the images here, all the categories here: chameleon, peacock, snake, hornbill, spider, iguana, etc. And there is about 14 million plus images, and there are 1,000 categories. So that's a challenge to implement your deep neural network for this classification algorithm. So a typical convolutional network will look like this. This is the feature learning part, and this is the classification part. In machine learning, you were identifying the features. The computer was not doing that. But in deep neural networks, the feature learning is also done by computers through convolutional filters. That's why we call this as computational neural network. This is an AlexNet, and each layer will have a convolutional layer, and which will include your non-linearity, which is a ReLU function in this. Why non-linearity? That's how the Maclaurin-Pitts model is. Okay, so one neuron gets input from all the neurons which is connected to that particular neuron, goes through an activation function or a non-linearity, and when the weighted sum of all the inputs crosses the threshold after the non-linearity, then that particular neuron fires. So that non-linearity is included in this network using the ReLU function, and the features are identified through convolution. You would have done correlation or data searching in the database, etc., where you have used correlation. But here we find out the features using convolution. Like you found out edges, you found out contours, you found out objects. So similarly, for each one of them, you will have a convolution filter for that. So you just repeat all these layers again and again. Pooling will reduce the size. That's why this cube is very big and this is small, and this again convolution, then again it becomes small, like that, just for handling data. And in the last 3 layers, you do the classification by flattening it. Make the image as a vector, and you have a neural network which is fully connected. All neurons are connected to every other neuron, and finally you classify this as which class it belongs to. So in this particular case, goldfish is the input, and therefore goldfish class will have the maximum output. The other classes will have less output, and that's why we use a softmax function to do the classification. Okay, so this entire network has about 62 million parameters. So that's a typical convolutional neural network, which is part of the deep learning. So that's how I explained you now itself about that. And these are the frameworks which you can dig into. You have Keras, Facebook have PyTorch, then you have Amazon AWS, etc. So you can just dig into all these deep learning frameworks and just start programming it. They have all the functions and for implementing this type of a network. So these are some of the examples of deep learning use cases. So we will just see one of the example. So maybe image detection by self-driving cars. What is the data? The images which you see on the roads while driving the car are the input data. And what is that you have to find out? You have to find out the labels and bounding boxes of the objects. It should identify the objects and do the driving according to that. It should avoid the objects. So the algorithm for that is FastRCNN. CNN is a convolutional neural network. Like that, I have explained many use cases. You can just go through. So there is another poll. I think you can just start. So let me see the same link. You can just click, and now we will see whether you are cracking this poll. So which is better, deep networks or shallow ones? And you have to tell me why it is better. Okay, are you able to give the poll? So shallow networks, as they are capable of approximating any function. This is the end of deep learning. So we will stop it and then just proceed. Which is better, I have asked, deep networks or shallow ones? Why? Deep networks, as they are capable of approximating any function. Shallow networks, as it works only with few features. Or deep networks, as it computes efficiently by working with more parameters. I think most of you have got it right. Okay. Yeah. So D is the correct, even though it is very complex, you have a lot of parameters, but it computes efficiently. The prediction or classification is going to be very efficient in deep networks. So, but whenever you have computational problems, which is not the case now, you have a lot of GPUs helping you with deep networks, and therefore deep networks are better than the shallow ones. Yeah. So we'll just skip all these things. We'll just go to, as time is already 8, we will see the differences between machine learning and deep learning. Okay, so machine learning talked about feature extraction, that you find out the features which is required, and then the machine learning will do the classification and classify it as a car. But now what we are doing in deep learning, it is like end-to-end learning. What you do, what you tell the network, you give the car image and tell it to identify as a car. So the convolutional neural network will do feature learning and classification together. So that's the difference between machine learning and deep learning. So machine learning has to parse data, learn from the data, make decisions. But what will deep learning do? Used in layers to create an artificial neural network that can learn and make intelligent decisions on its own. It's a subfield of machine learning. So these are the factors which you can compare between deep learning and machine learning. Requires large data. That's the only constraint of deep learning. But machine learning can train on lesser data. Provides high accuracy, gives lesser accuracy. Takes longer to train. Requires GPU to train properly because CPUs are not sufficient. Can be tuned in various different ways. You can talk about hyperparameter tuning. You can use different convolutional filters, different activation functions. You can try out different number of layers, etc. And these have limited tuning capabilities. So this is how machine learning and deep learning will perform with respect to amount of data. Machine learning cannot perform better as the data increases, but deep learning will keep on performing better. This is the performance will keep on performing better as the amount of data increases. So this is, we saw earlier, GPU versus CPU, that is hardware dependency. This is GPU is for deep learning, CPU is for machine learning. Feature engineering, you know the difference now. Problem solving approach is different for machine learning and deep learning. Execution time is very high in deep learning. And interpretability, ML is easier because you can understand, because it has a reasoning. You know these features belong to this particular object. That's why it is being classified like that. But in deep learning, it is doing everything on its own. So the representation is not very interpretable. It will just give you some weights, but you don't know what are the weights for the car and what are the weights for the bird, etc. Okay, so interpretability is very bad in deep learning. So these are the differences. So this also we saw. This is slightly the same thing expanded with different. The interpretive problem is deep learning is often seen as black box systems that researchers struggle to unwind and explain how and why the system reached a particular outcome. It will do something to get a particular outcome. You will not know what it has done. But in machine learning, it is easier to understand how and why the ML algorithm arrived at an outcome. You have to keep in mind at the end of this presentation, data is the fuel of the future. Okay, I think you all know about Andrew Ng. He's a chief scientist of China's major search engine Baidu, which I showed you in the initial introduction part, and one of the leaders of Google Brain project. What he says is, I think artificial intelligence is akin to building a rocket ship. Okay, you need a huge engine and a lot of fuel. That is your data. That's why we call it as data as the fuel of the future. So if you have a large engine and a tiny amount of fuel, you won't make it to the orbit. The engine will not go to the orbit. If you have a tiny engine and a large amount of fuel, you can't even lift it off because the engine doesn't have the power to lift it on its own. So to build a rocket, you need a huge engine and a lot of fuel. That's how deep learning is. The analogy to deep learning is you require a lot of data as well as lot of layers to process it. Is that the rocket engine is the deep learning models and the fuel is the huge amounts of data we can feed to those algorithms. So keep this example in your mind and then you will understand what is deep learning. Okay. So deep learning is going to disrupt the way how we are writing the code. Whatever we were writing till now, the sorting algorithm or the searching algorithm is all software version 1. It is known as classical stack. But now what we are going to do is we are going to write the code through an optimizer. Okay, this is known as software version 2. It's a user unfriendly language. You cannot write line by line code. There are millions of weights. It's all like finally finding out the weights in that deep learning algorithm. Okay, no human involved in coding. That entire deep learning network, it will just find out the weights in those networks and you cannot interpret anything out of that, and therefore that is known as software version 2. Okay, the code is written by the optimizer. So this is what the program space is. The program complexity increases from the center to the circumference of the peripheral of the circle, and software version 1 is just one point in this, but software version 2 does all the optimization, and you can see that it will increase the program complexity and you don't know what is happening, but finally you will get an outcome. Okay, that is software version 2. So this is what software version 2 is: computationally homogeneous, simple to bake into silicon. That's another advantage when you want to make chips. Software version 2 is very important because it's very optimized. Constant runtime, anytime you repeat the operation, it will take the same time. Highly portable, very agile. It is you can use it as a simple implementation, can melt into optimal whole, and it is better than you. A neural network is a better piece of code than anything you and I can come up within a large fraction of valuable verticals. So now the crux of this presentation is we have to update ourselves and go through the transition stage from the normal programming to software version 2, where we try to do optimized deep design optimized deep neural networks. Okay, but there are some disadvantages. It's not like it can do whatever you want. So there are problems like this. So if the autonomous vehicle sees the road like this, when the illumination is very good, but if the illumination is bad during evenings or late nights or something, it may do a wrong prediction. Okay, so this is very dangerous, and you should be careful of these limitations. Similarly, I have an image. This is a panda image, as you have seen, and if I add some random noise of just 0.007 standard deviation to this particular panda image, it will identify this image as not panda. It will identify as a gibbon. This is another version of a monkey with 99% confidence. Each deep learning framework will give you the confidence probability also, because it is all like soft thresholding. It is not like it is a gibbon or it is a panda with 100% probability. It will give you the confidence measure also. So if this input is given, the deep neural network gave you the answer as panda with only 50% confidence. But once you added noise and then gave this image to the deep neural network, it identified this as gibbon, which is totally a different class with 99% confidence. So you should be careful with adversarial examples. These are examples created from the original example. So you should be careful. We create these adversarial examples because we want lot of data for training the deep neural network. So be careful before training the network. So these are the limitations. Okay. So the last poll, you can just start, and that will be the end of my talk. So indicate the limitations of deep learning. The same website, you can just go and do that. So the first point says requires large amount of training data, are not easily fooled, or uninterpretable black boxes, well integrated with prior knowledge. Yeah. No, D is not the answer. A and C are the answers. Requires large amount of training data. So that's why unless you have large amount of data, you cannot use deep learning. Not easily fooled is not the answer. Or uninterpretable black boxes also I have already told in my presentation, and therefore that's a correct answer. But it doesn't have any prior knowledge. So D is not the correct answer because you are just feeding the data. We are not giving any knowledge as input or prior knowledge as input to the data. Okay. So that's the end of my presentation. I'll just summarize and then I'll just stop. Yeah, machine learning as an AI approach, it overcomes limitations of knowledge-based systems. Types of AI tasks which we saw: supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised, reinforcement, etc. Classification, regression, and ranking outputs. And the models can be generative or discriminative. And finally, we talked about software version 1 and software version 2. Principled approach to develop IT systems, and the drivers are mobile systems and personalization, which we achieved through big data. Okay. So these are some of the references, good references for teaching this course. And I think you can combine machine learning and deep learning into one course, maybe 3 or 4 chapters of machine learning and 2 chapters of deep learning should be sufficient, because most of the deep learning is in the research level now. So you cannot have it as a full course in a UG course, but for PG, I think you can have a separate course. So these are some of the books which you can refer to. Yeah, I'm open to any question answers if you have.
Participants, if you have any queries, you can post in the chat box. Otherwise, you can unmute yourself and ask the questions. I really want to thank all the participants for making this webinar a grand success. At the same time, I would like to thank the participants for coming at the session at the right time. Thanks a lot.
What makes deep learning so powerful? It's because it has a lot of layers, and it works like how our brain works. So as you understand, the neurobiology people have found out that there are so many neurons in our brain, and they are so much interconnected, and whatever experience we gather over our years is stored in the brain. And deep learning also uses the same architecture of neurons, and try to find out the weights which will fire each of these neuron. And that's why it gives you many applications, but it's not so easy to train it, but it can do anything whatever you want. So however we have experience, we can build that experience into a deep learning network and try to perform the task which we wanted to perform. I think it would have answered your question. There's another question: how data mining is related to machine learning? Data mining talks about only organizing the data or finding out the relationship between the data, etc. So finding out the patterns from the data is called data mining. But if we are trying to find out algorithms to do a task, we call it as machine learning. So if we want the machines to learn from the data, we call it as machine learning. But data mining is just to handle the large databases. So that is known as data mining. Application of machine learning methods is also known as data mining. use of Bayes theorem in machine learning. That's the basic theorem which you have to know before you start machine learning. So before you understand any machine learning algorithm, you should have strong basics in probability theory, particularly Bayes theorem, and also linear algebra. Otherwise, it's not worth digging into machine learning, because I'm just giving to a computer science department. I didn't touch upon all these things. But if you are particularly from electronics and engineering department faculty, it's better you start with probability, linear algebra, and then go into machine learning. In my college, actually, we give this course in 3 semesters. We start with probability basics and linear algebra in 5th semester. 6th semester, we teach them machine learning, and in 7th semester, we teach them deep learning. So that's the amount of material is available, and that's what students also require. All are interested to do MS in data science, etc. So we try to give that basics for them through 3 semester courses. If I study IoT and AI together, will it be beneficial? I don't think so. I feel Internet of Things has some machine learning part in that, but it's more like putting data into the cloud and then doing some inference and doing it. But you will not be able to concentrate more on machine learning if you are concentrating on IoT, because IoT has its own complexity of designing the architecture or the hardware, and how to put that in the cloud, how to get the decision from the cloud, and make that decision work in the hardware, and all those things. And therefore, I feel they should be totally different. If you are doing AI or machine learning, I think you need not concentrate on the hardware of IoT, and vice versa. Thank you. Natural language processing and machine learning relation. Natural language processing is an application of machine learning. So if I have to do text to speech or identify what or speaker recognition or speech recognition, etc., that's all machine learning one. So natural language processing is just an application of machine learning. Thank you.
Dr. Sethu Selvi, thanks a lot. Thank you for spending your valuable time. Now I request Swatika Madam to propose the vote of thanks. Swatika Ma'am, please.
Good evening to one and all. First of all, I would like to thank the resource person, Dr. S. Sethu Selvi, Professor and Head, Department of ECE, Ramaya Institute of Technology, Bangalore. And she has explained clearly about the relation over artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. Also, she has narrated so many examples of AI, how all things are automated without human intervention. And she has also clearly explained about machine learning as well as deep learning, its approaches, and as well as its application. She gave a very detailed talk on AI, machine learning, and deep learning. Really, her talk was highly informative and very useful to all of us. So on behalf of our institution and Department of Computer Science and Engineering, I wholeheartedly thank the resource person for her valuable and excellent speech. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, one and all. Thank you, participants.